Hello everyone, Stepan here. Today I'm finally going to continue the series on the Sicilian defense with probably one of the most fun variations of the Sicilian and one of the most aggressive ways for white to face c5, and that's the Smith-Morra Gambit. Now I myself have been trying to collect enough courage to play that move in a tournament game for quite some time. I never have, however, but I probably will in the near future, because even though the opening is really fun and well, you could get interesting attacking positions from it, you do give up a pawn early on, and you'll see what the problems are. Now it doesn't necessarily mean that white is worse or that white is better, but it just suits players who know how to keep the initiative and to gain extra initiative in a position. And if you waste time once you've given up material, then you probably are going to lose or have a hard time regaining the material. Now, on the other hand, if you play aggressively and use every tempo, every move to increase your positional or strategical advantage, then giving up a pawn doesn't really mean anything. So after e4, c5, the Smith-Morra Gambit is the move d4, and of course you can see that white is giving up a central pawn after c takes d4. You aren't going to be recapturing with the queen, because queen takes knight to c6 is, well, a waste of time basically. You play c3, and the point of the move c3, which is a sacrifice black has to accept. Black can't really defend with e5, and after cd, ed, black would have a weak pawn which white could then recapture. With this move, white is simply giving up a pawn for faster development. And after d takes c3 and knight takes c3, you can see that black traded his only developed pawn, his only developed piece on the board, his c pawn, and in exchange for that, in exchange for the extra pawn for black, white has a knight developed and a strong central pawn on e4. Now, with the pawn on e4, white is of course controlling the d5 square and the f5 square, which is of course a huge advantage if black can't challenge that. And black actually has three responses. Two of them will lead to a Scheveningen type of pawn structure with pawns on e6 and d6, and that's if black decides to play either e6 or d6 on move 2, on move 4. And they will most commonly transpose. Now, after e6, white should play knight to f3, and after knight to c6, which is black's most logical continuation, it will transpose to the main line with 4 knight to c6, which we are going to go over now. But if after knight to f3, black chooses to play d6, now you are in a sort of in a Scheveningen type of structure in which white is a pawn down, but he has two developed pieces, and it's his turn. So after the move bishop to c4, I think I would always rather have white in this position. You have three pieces developed, black only has his pawns on e6 and d6, and if you ask the engines, they are going to tell you that the position is minus 0.1, 0.2, so nothing significant, equal, perhaps slightly better for black, but black will have a hard time proving that advantage if it exists at all. And well, at least from a human perspective, having three pieces developed in exchange for a pawn is, I think, a good trade. If you prefer risky, aggressive chess, if you are a positional Petrosian type of player or Karpov type of player, then just go for the closed Sicilian. Well, by the way, if you like the knowledge in the basic theory of the Sicilian defense, I have made an introductory video on that. You can find the link in the description below. And I will also link to some less aggressive variations which white could choose, so you can see something else, something different. After bishop to c4, black now has to start developing. So bishop to e7, trying to castle as soon as possible. White castles, knight to f6, queen to e2, and now the move queen to e2 is preparing the move e5, and black sort of has to react to that. So now knight to c6 has to be played, preventing the move e5. And after rook to d1, for white, which is spinning the d pawn, now white is actually threatening the move e5. And in this position, well, let's say black castles, let's say black makes a mistake, then e5 is almost winning for white, because black would have to play knight to e8. Any other move loses some material, and after e takes d6, bishop takes d6, white just has a huge advantage. The development advantage is overwhelming. The queen is pinned. The knight on e8 is completely insignificant. The bishop is blocked by the e6 pawn. The rook on f8 has, well, will have to wait at least 2 or 3 moves to be developed. So in this position, black has to be careful about the move e5. So after rook to d1, black's best choice and probably the only move is to play e5 himself, even though that weakens the critical d5 square in the position, and this is black's main weakness in almost any variation of the Sicilian, especially in some Morozzi bind positions and in this position as well. And now the fact that white doesn't have a c2 pawn doesn't mean anything. The c2 pawn would be insignificant in this position, and now considering white's positional and opening advantage and his advantage in development, this pawn sacrifice has already been completely justified, and I think that white has a strong advantage here, even though the engines prefer material still, so they can't really understand that. Okay, so after the move e5, white of course doesn't have to use his positional advantage, the weak d5 square, immediately. White can just continue normally with, let's say, bishop to e3, and after black castles, rook a to c1, and now every single piece on the board for white is perfect, and this is why I think this variation is viable and why I think this variation can be played. And the highest rated games were 2600-2700 strong grandmaster games, so, well, the strongest players in the world think the position is sane, so why not choose it? But these were the sidelines, and after knight takes c3, black can play e6 or d6, which we just went over, which are most commonly going to transpose into each other with a sort of Scheveningen pawn structure on e6 and e6. And in that case, just develop your bishop to c4 and try to play as aggressively as possible. Use your time advantage and don't play passive moves. Don't play moves. Well, I can't really think of a banned move here, or a move that your intuition would cause you to play, which is bad. But let's say don't play b2 and b3 and bishop to b2. That's a waste of time. You have to keep developing. So knight to f3, knight c6 castles, and get all of your pieces active, get your king safe, and try to create an attack before black has enough time to develop. Now you can see that black's king side is completely undeveloped, black's c8 bishop is useless, and the a8 rook is, well, still a long time from moving anywhere. But let's go over the main line. After knight takes c3, black's main move here is knight to c6, and the move knight to c6 is trying to well, hold on to the position, not hold on to the position, but try to fight white in the center as soon as possible without wasting time defending his position with the moves e6, d6, etc. Now after knight to f3, it's clear that white is going to be playing bishop to c4 as well, and black has to develop his bishop anyway, so black is almost always going to play the move e6. d6 is, well, less common here and less good in this position, because then you would either going to have to play e6 or g6, bishop to g7. And I think the move after knight to f3, the move e6, lets black do everything he wants to do in the position as fast as possible, and it doesn't waste any time. It's strengthening the diagonal, which is going to become critical after the move such as bishop to c4, and it's also preparing to play bishop to e7 or bishop to b4. Could also be played because the knight would be then would be pinned, and it's just a good move. So now bishop to c4. And yeah, another thing that black has to do, another thing black has to waste time with, is the move a6. So now you are in a weird semi-Najdorf position, a pawn up, and you just had to waste another pawn move because this is going to be threatened at some point, and after knight to b5, the knight threatens to come to d6, so black would have to play d6 to prevent that. So the move a6 is a prophylactic move to stop those ideas. Well, so if you're black, just remember that you have to play a6, that you have to play e6 in this position, because that's the fastest way for you to start developing normally. And those are with these two moves you are preventing most of white's threats. You can also play queen to c7, but after the move knight to b5, then if the queen has to retreat, well, I wouldn't want to have this position with black. Let's say queen to b8 would be a normal move. You are preventing this, but still, I believe that the move a6 is just better. So after a6, white continues with his development, castles, and now I'm going to show you from this position on, this is sort of the starting position of the Smith-Morra Gambit. I'm going to show you the lines that I have been analyzing, which I think are just good for white, and lines in which black goes wrong, but you're not sure why, and all of a sudden even the engines agree that white has an advantage even though he's a pawn down. So, well, let me know if you can understand why. Here black continues development, knight g to e7, bishop to g5. This is a move that, well, you can play bishop to e3, which is definitely even visually more passive than bishop to g5, and it's not really clear what the move bishop to g5 does, but you're basically provoking either a6 or f6, because the bishop is a nuisance here on g5, and black's best moves are either h6, after which you retreat to e3 with your bishop and you have just provoked a weakness, or after bishop to g5, f6, which is a better option because you are giving your king an escape square. And you can imagine in some positions when the pawn is still on f7 and the knight has just developed to the e7 square, a move such as knight to b5 and knight to d6 would be checkmate, and black is in a lot of trouble if he isn't careful. And there isn't really a better way to develop, because if you put your knight on f6 instead of on e7, then the move e5 is actually forcing the knight to go back, and the knight doesn't have any squares. So f6, the best move, you're giving your king an escape square. Well, knight to d6 would still be checkmate because it's covering f7 as well, but at least you are giving your king an escape route in some other cases. So after f6, bishop to e3 once again, and now b5. And b5 is a very aggressive move and a double-edged move for black, but if you don't play b5, then how are you planning to develop your bishop from c8? And after b5 is played, the engines agree that white is better in this position. Well, one move has been played around 70 times in this position with the white pieces, and the other move, which I think is better, has only been played once. The preferred move by strong players is bishop to b3, keeping the bishop on this diagonal. But I was looking at the move bishop to e2, and I think that this move could prove to be better, because once knight to d4 is played, you have some bishop to h5 ideas, and you are keeping your queen here, which after bishop to b3 is most commonly going to go to h5. So I think bishop to e2 is a better move because it keeps your position defended well enough, and you can't really expect to do much on this diagonal, because in worst case for black he's going to have to play d5, and your bishop is sort of in the way of that, and you can't challenge d5 that well. But yeah, both moves can be played. After b5, either bishop to b3 or bishop to e2. Since bishop to b3 is the main line, we are going to continue with that. And I was actually analyzing this position for a couple of hours in the last tournament I played, and against an opponent who plays the Sicilian, I ended up playing normally with knight to f3, which I regretted because he crushed me. And had I played d4, perhaps the result would have been different. So after bishop to b3, black is going to play knight to g6, getting his knight out of the way and trying to castle finally. Knight to d4, and now bishop to b7. And black's best move is to take and to trade pieces here. And now white's plan is simply f4 and just winning on the king side. And this position looks too good for white, in my opinion. Once again, the fact that you don't have the c2 pawn is perhaps an advantage, even because after your rook comes to c1, it's going to have an open file. So I believe that white is better here. And after knight to d4, if black plays bishop to b7, believe it or not, I can turn on the engine. This is almost plus 1.5 for white, because you can now capture on c6, and after bishop takes c6, after f4, the bishop is misplaced on this diagonal for some reason. The engines would like to have the bishop here. I can understand that, because after f5 you at least have a couple of at least you have another defender. And now after h5, which is the best move for black, which is absurd, and rook to c1, this is what I have calculated for my game, and I just thought that white has to be winning here. And still, in this position, after knight to g6, knight to d4, I thought that any human would play bishop to b7 unless he has been analyzing this position in depth, which I thought my opponent probably hadn't done, because the Smith-Morra Gambit is a surprise for any Sicilian player. So yeah, this is the position which you could probably reach in your games. I think 2 points at which black could go wrong are here. I don't think black would trade on d4. I think developing a bishop seems much more logical, and I think most people will do that. And in this position after castles, knight g to e7, bishop to g5, I think most people won't find the move f6. Now, let's see what else has been played. So, well, mostly f6 and h6, as I said, but some people have tried d6 as well. Queen to c7 has been played. I mean, all of those moves are okay, but I think they are too slow, and I think you have to force the bishop away from g5. Okay, so yeah, that's what I wanted to show you. Let's go over the opening once again. So if you want to find a great surprise weapon against Sicilian players, and especially if you are playing somebody much lower rated than you or much higher rated than you, in positions in which you can afford to take a risk, in the first case, because you're probably going to win even though you're material down, because you are faster in calculation and you're stronger tactically and positionally. And if you're playing somebody stronger, well, you have nothing to lose. And players who are 2300, 2200, 2100, they aren't perfect, they aren't engines, nor are they grandmasters. So if you force them into a tactical position, then they might actually go wrong and you could win. So okay, c5, d4, and after cd4, don't take the pawn with the queen, don't be a coward. c3, the Smith-Morra Gambit, d takes c3, knight takes c3. And if you like having development in exchange for material, you should definitely try it out. Now, if you want to study the opening, I can't really recommend the player who's been playing this a lot, because there isn't one. But you can find some games on chessgames.com, which are quite interesting. You can find some in the databases as well. And I would definitely recommend studying from here on, and studying the position in which you have the knight on f3, the bishop on c4, the dark squared bishop either on e3 or g5, and castling short. You should never castle long in this position. And as I said, try to, well, your main plan in the position is to get all of those moves which I mentioned. Let's go to that position. Wait. So, okay, castles, knight g7, bishop to g5, f6, bishop to e3, b5. Okay, so let's say bishop to b3, let's say black plays well with knight to g6, knight d4, and let's say black exchanges. Now in this position, black should play, well, black should castle in my opinion, but the engines and the live book give different moves. Let's say the move bishop to e7 is played. Then simply f4. Your idea is always to play f4 to get f5 in and to open up the position. If your bishop is on b3, then he's going to be a menace on this diagonal. You can also play e5 if you put your bishop on e2. This is the position I have been looking at, because then black is basically forced to play f5 and to open up this diagonal. And then after that, h4, h5, and just checkmate and get a winning position. So I think it's really fun. I think you have a lot of attacking ideas with the white pieces, and that, well, this opening should be played more often. I'm definitely going to get enough courage to play it, probably next time. Okay, once again, you have a link in the description below with the basics of the Sicilian, some other variations as well. Let me know if you have any questions, suggestions, if you've been playing the Smith-Morra Gambit in your own tournament games. And thanks very much for watching. I hope you got something from this video. Sorry for not uploading anything for a long time. I had a lot of work to do, but hopefully now I'll have more time. And stay tuned for more chess. See you later. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.